From a blue pixel blur on the Sega Genesis to a fully rendered hedgehog sprinting across photorealistic landscapes, Sonic has gone through more transformations than most video game icons ever will. But it's not just the gameplay that's changed. Sonic's renders, 3D models, and especially his supersonic forms have evolved dramatically through every mainline title, and the art style of each game is adapted to fit its style. And in this video we're going to dive deeper into the visual evolution of Sonic, including the animation, game by game, from Sonic the Hedgehog's 1991 game, all the way to the brand new Sonic X Shadow Generations. We're going to analyze every major model shift, the iconic and not so iconic redesigns, and how his look is adapted to each console generation, and even how Supersonic's glow up has gone from a simple color scheme to a full-on celestial energy blast. As this is more than just a retrospective, but it's a breakdown of Sonic's digital identity, how it's matured, adapted, and sometimes glitched hilariously along the way. Let's start at the very beginning, back when Sonic only had 16 bits to show off his attitude.
And you'll see.
Let's go back to 1991. Gas was cheap, arcades were loud, and Sega were absolutely losing to Mario, as much as I hate to admit that. The House of Genesis needed a mascot with attitude, speed, and a smirk that screamed, "I'm cooler than your Italian plumber." Right out the gate, Sega flexes, you boot up the game and boom, that crisp, colourful title screen hits you. Sonic pops out of a gold ring, wags his finger like he's your older brother saying, "Try me," and gives the kind of smirk that says, "I know I'm the main character." But this isn't just attitude, but it's visual storytelling, as the wagging finger is not just sass, but it's a technical marvel for its time. It loops perfectly, delivers character, and sets Sonic apart as more than just a sprite. He's a presence among the gaming community. Now let's talk about Sonic's actual in-game model. In Sonic 1, he's short, stout, and radiating 90s cool. This version of Sonic isn't just trying to look realistic, but he's stylized to feel fast. Notice how the proportions lean into exaggeration. Big head, thick legs, and compact torso. That's not just a design quirk, but it's a performance enhancement, as the chunky legs make his spin dash look even more powerful, even before the spin dash existed with his roll. And his stiff quills become visual arrows that scream, "This way." Everything about Green Hill Zone is crafted to suit Sonic. The art style is built around the contrast, as you've got the emerald green grass, the checkered brown dirt, and the bright blue skies. And what colour pops beautifully against all of that? That's right, Sonic's blue. His design is designed to clash with the environment just enough to where he's always readable, and even at top speeds. That's not an accident, but it's visual hierarchy at work despite the technical limitations of the time. One of the things that people don't talk about in Sonic 1 is the subtle animation work. Like yeah, the spin jump and run cycle are iconic, but have you ever just stood still? Seriously, just stop pressing anything. Sonic gives you the look. He taps his foot, his eyelids drop halfway like, "Bro, you done?" And the auto animation is everything. It gives him attitude, sure, but it also does something deeper. It builds trust. You know Sonic will wait for you, he's chill, and he's not rushing you. He's letting you catch up. Well, apart from Sonic CD. That's character conveyed through animation, and it's absolutely genius. And let's also talk about how smooth his run cycle is. For a 16-bit sprite, that loop is shockingly fluid. Every frame has him lean slightly forward, arms pumping, quills bobbing in perfect arcs, which by the way, match the flowing sunflowers and the spinning totems in the background. That's not just not pretty art, but it's synchronization between environment and character. Let's zoom in on something that people skip over, the terrain. Those checkerboard cliffs and looping ramps, they aren't just there to look funky, but they're crafted to feel playable. The ground tiles are angular and geometric, creating momentum-friendly shapes that let Sonic's model shine. Watch him build speed on a slope. His body leans, his legs spin like a buzzsaw, and that sense of motion is amplified by how the level scrolls with him. The grass shakes, the totem spins, and even the clouds cruise by. It's like a living canvas, and Sonic is using as the paintbrush. And let's not forget the sound design. That boing spring noise and the twinkle from the ring grab, they're all tightly bound to feel the model's movement. Every action is reinforced by sound and motion, making Sonic feel less like a code and more like a character. Coolness in contrast, as Sonic is not just fast, but he was designed to feel cool in every way. Look at his pose when he hits a ramp, arms out like a skater mid-trick, or how he rolls up mid-air, forming a perfect circle that's readable from any screen size. That's good design. Even his color palette was a statement. Yuji Naka himself said that once they chose Sonic's blue to match the Sega's logo, but the red and white shoes? That's a subtle nod to Michael Jackson and Santa Claus. Yes, that's real. Sonic was literally designed to be iconic from Pixel 1. Sonic's model isn't just about his looks, but it's about the flow. Every transition is buttery smooth. Stop running, he slides to a halt. Jump on a spring, he stretches slightly before launch. These micro motions matter because they make the model feel weighty, despite being made of 60 gigabytes of sprites. Sonic feels good to control, not just because of the code, but because every animation is crafted to feel natural, expressive, and fast, despite the technical limitations of the hardware at its time. Sonic's one model was a pixel perfect for its time. It was built to blend to the world, stand out to the competition, and most importantly, it was built to feel alive and fast. That was its key selling point, the speed. The way Sonic moves, stops, blinks, taps, and even breathes through motion alone, it adds up to one thing. A character that was born not just to play, but to perform. So you thought Sonic 1 was peak? Nah, Sega was just warming up. Sonic 2 pulled up like, hey, what if we took the iconic blue burr and gave him a glow up, added his fox friend, doubled the loops, and added a 2-player split screen, and, oh yeah, made him go Super Saiyan? Yeah, this is where Sonic went global. First things first, let's talk about the model's upgrade. At a glance, he still looks like Sonic 1's version, but side by side, big difference. The sprite resolution is higher, the lines are cleaner, his legs are slightly longer, his torso is leaner, and his quills have been sharpened into absolute speed daggers. The entire silhouette just reads faster. More importantly, Sonic's animations are now smoother, with more frames, more poses, and a massive bump in expressiveness. Remember how Sonic 1's idle pose was a foot-tapping shade? In Sonic 2, he looks like he's about to start pacing. The idle animation looks slightly tighter and has better flow, and the eyebrow attitude is off the charts. Sonic's model is no longer just cool, but it's a cinematic marvel. One thing you notice immediately in Sonic 2 is how fluid everything feels. The run cycle has more in-between frames now, making it feel faster without sacrificing legibility. There's a new mid-speed pose too, that little leaning jog Sonic does before he hits top speed. That's a performance detail. He's no longer just a ball of blur, but he builds into it. That transition makes him feel more grounded in the world and also sells the acceleration that Sonic 1 never could, despite still being just as fast. Also, skid frames? Oh yes. Hit back mid-run, Sonic doesn't just stop, but he slides. He leans back, puts his arms out and kicks up dust like you're about to hit a perfect sense of weight and momentum. It's such a small thing, but it makes Sonic feel like a physical being, not just a sprite zipping on rails. Now let's not talk about Green Hill 2.0, aka Emerald Hill Zone. We've seen this grass before. Instead, let's take Sonic's model out for a spin in Casino Night Zone. Arguably one of the most visually expressive, texture-rich stages in the game. It's Vegas, but Sega-lied neon lights, pulsing textures, pinball physics, and it all works because Sonic's model is versatile enough to shine in the completely new contrast. Despite all the flashing colours and the busy detail, Sonic's silhouette is always visible. His palette, especially those red shoes, contrast beautifully with the midnight blues and the flashing purples of the background. And that spin dash? Oh baby, it was born for levels like this. The charge up animation, Sonic curling into himself and vibrating in place like a wind-up toy. It's kinetic art. It sells power and chaos without ready to launch into energy. And it's all in one model. Even the bounce physics here feel different. The way Sonic ricochets off bumpers, stretches slightly mid-bounce and snaps into ball form, it's slapstick and tech wizardry. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the warp ring. Super Sonic. This is the first game where Sonic gets his glorious golden transformation, and let's be honest, it was a flex. Gameplay wise, you're faster, invincible, and basically breaking the level in real time, but visually, Super Sonic is a game changer. When you transform, the model changes on the fly. His spikes flip upwards, Goku style. His fur turns gold, and he gets a new aura. And before you dislike this video, Super Sonic is its own identity, not related to Goku. And his pose when idle, it's slightly more upright. The devs didn't need to go this hard, but they knew. Super Sonic had to feel like a reward, and the subtle model tweaks that slightly a cockier stance and the quicker animations, the lighter bounce when you jump, they sell the fantasy. He's not just a palette swap, but he's a full-on metamorphosis. And paired with the glowing sound effect and the fast tempo, Super Sonic becomes a power fantasy that is embedded in the design of the model itself. Let's not underplay how much the environments evolved in Sonic 2 and how they shaped the way that Sonic's model functions. We're talking about spiraling corkscrews, vertical launches, underwater caves, anti-gravity elevators, and Sonic's animations adapt to all of them? Go underwater, you get a slower jump, heavier momentum, and a clutch that little bloop animation than when he hits the water's surface. Except for when you drown. Run up a vertical half-pipe in chemical plant and Sonic tilts naturally with the curve, maintaining the visual balance so that the model never feels out of place. That's the camera's design and the sprite alignment working in harmony. And did I mention Tails? Because now Sonic has a buddy on screen and his model needs to work alongside the second character at all times. Sonic 2's design ensures that he always has the visual anchor, thanks to the bolder outlines and the brighter animations and the slightly larger frames. Sonic 2 gives Sonic range. He doesn't just run and jump, he leaps, bounces, battles bosses, and even gets launched out of cannons, and the model never breaks. That's because his transition frames are meticulously crafted and you never jump from one action to another without a tweened frame from easing you in. It's why Sonic feels so satisfying to control even when the physics are funky. There's always a visual cue telling you that when Sonic's state is curled. Curled in, spinned, uncurled landing, acceleration lean, spring jump stretch, it's all embedded in the art of the model, and even the death animations are so iconic. That little backward flare with the wide eyes and the flapping arms. Pain never looks so memeable. But Sonic 2 isn't just a sequel, but it's a statement that Sonic's model didn't just get smoother, it got smarter. More expressive, more responsive from the world around it, and into the addition of Super Sonic, for the first time, Sonic becomes two models in one game, more grounded, and one godlike. From the flowing animations to the precision engineered sprite tweaks, Sonic's model sets out the new bar for what 2D Sonic could be. But it wasn't just about looking cool, but it was about the physical phenomenal in emotion, under pressure at 1000 miles per hour. And trust me, we haven't even gotten to Sonic CD yet. Alright, now we enter the time warp fever dream that is Sonic CD. This game is divisive. Some people say it's a misunderstood masterpiece, and others say it's a chaotic side dish to the Sonic 2's main course. But no matter how you slice it, one thing is absolutely undeniable. Sonic's model in Sonic CD is one of the boldest, strongest, and most experimental sprite designs in 2D platforming history. Let's start with something revolutionary, the intro animation, officially titled Sonic Boom. And yeah, it's as the 90s as rad as it sounds. This was the first time Sonic fans saw their blue blur animated in full anime glory. Courtesy of Toei Animation, and it wasn't just a marketing fluff, it gave us a model benchmark, its stylistic standard that the game's sprites would try to live up to. Now I get it was understood and it was matched to actually happen at this time, but it's a physical marvel. Sonic is longer, leaner, with exaggerated limbs that are iconic, swooping you quick as his fills flick as he runs. His running form is textbook, chest forward, fists tight. His super peel out pose is introduced here, standing on one leg and the other one doing the infinity symbol of motion. It screams style and absurd speed, like he's revving his own body. But maybe the most striking part is the camera work as we get dynamic pans, zooms, and even a low angle hero shot, giving Sonic a sense of scale and momentum that no other 2D game has had before. The intro told you that loud and clear, this isn't just a platformer, this is a high-speed anime with a controller. But let's actually talk about the game. In the game model of Sonic CD, it's technically based on Sonic 1's sprite, not Sonic 2's improved version. That's because development started before Sonic 2 released and CD ran on the Sega CD's add-on and a different beast entirely. So, is it better or worse? Well, it depends what you value. In terms of the animation, Sonic CD is animation rich. His run is more with fluid frames and there's a more special twist on the fast run animation when you use the super peel out, where his legs literally become speed ribbons. But in terms of the proportions and clarity, it's a bit odd. Sonic's head is huge and his body is tiny, his arms are super short and the model leans into a kind of cartoonish elasticity, which it works great for comedy and expression but leaks the sleek design. It's not as cool as Sonic 2's Sonic, it's more like a Saturday morning cartoon Sonic with infinite energy, and that's exactly what it was going for. So it's down to personal preference. The super peel out is Sonic's brand new signature move and the hipster cousin of the spin dash. Instead of curling into a ball, Sonic remains standing and winds up his feet like an 8-figure blur. It's visually insane and he's literally warping between the laws of animation. Functionally, it gives you the instant top speed, but it leaves you vulnerable since you're not in a ball. So from a model perspective, the super peel out does two huge things. It adds to a new pose of the Sonic's library. It's the ready to launch animation, where his eyes narrow, fists clench, and his whole body leans forward. It gives weight to the motion. This launch has recoil, you feel the force, it's the only time where Sonic doesn't roll at speed and it makes him feel like he's a race car burning rubber. It's a statement move, pure attitude of Sonic. Now we have to bring up Metal Sonic, not just because he's a villain but he's a mirror. Metal Sonic's design is a mechanical parody of Sonic's model. He mimics the peel out, the spin, and the acceleration, all animated with a cool calculated sharpness, and in fact, in the boss chase with Metal Sonic and Stardust Speedway, this is the best case study for Sonic CD's model philosophy. Sonic's animation is wild, expressive, and even messy, and all the arcs and curves and spring-loaded limbs. Metal Sonic is tight, controlled, and symmetrical. He barely even blinks. This juxtaposition highlights Sonic CD's aesthetic limb. Sonic is an organic energy whilst Metal Sonic is a robotic perfection. And yes, the cutscene before the boss fight where Metal Sonic scans Sonic, glows red and revs up, that's the straight up 2D flex. This game also introduced Amy Rose, and the second Sonic sees her, he literally shakes his head and backs up awkwardly. It's a tiny moment, but the model includes custom animations for the character interaction, rare in platformers at this time. Sonic's model also emotes better in CD than any other prior title. He winks, grits his teeth, and throws peace signs. He even does the jazz hands victory pose even after time traveling. The devs really leaned into personality over the realism. Now, this is where Sonic CD's sprite gets a bit trippy. Literally. Every level has 4 visual variants: past, present, good future, and bad future. In Sonic's model has to work with all of them. In the quartz quadrant, you've got a moody industrial blues with green lasers and a flickering crystal. In Wacky Workbench, the backgrounds are full of neon circuits and the floor launches you like a trampoline. And the bad future zones are desaturated, apocalyptic, and Sonic's bright blue sprite pops against the doom. This game isn't just about a visual playground, but it's about Sonic's model testing lab. The sprite is constantly being thrown into new color palettes and the tile sets and weird effects. It's like it almost always holds up. But let's be real, Sonic CD isn't just all about the tight control, but it's about the chaotic spectacle, and the Sonic model reflects that. He's bouncier, cartoonier, looser in form, and tighter in animation, and the Super Peel Out definitely shows this. It's less about the grounded realism and more about the speed as an emotion. You don't just play as Sonic, but you feel like you're chasing him through a hallucination made of pinball machines, and if Sonic 2 was about refinement, Sonic CD was about rebellion. This model is faster, weirder, and way more elastic than anything before it. Whether it's better or worse depends on what you want. Sonic CD is expressive, flexible, fun, but also has slightly less cool and heroic than Sonic 2's sharp-edged speedster. But in terms of the animation quality, the range of poses, and the artistic ambition, Sonic CD's model was ahead of its time. Paired with the legendary intro, this is the game where Sonic stopped just being a sprite and stood up and became a full-blown character. Welcome to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, my personal favourite. A game that isn't just a sequel, but it's a definitive statement. A game where the character sprite, environmental artistry, and the mechanical animation hit their 2D peak. Where Sonic doesn't just run fast, but he runs with purpose. This is where Sonic's model for the first time begins to mature, shedding his cartoon baby fat and slowly becomes the Sonic we know today. This is going to be insanely detailed and pixel perfect, as we can't even just ignore the title screen. Sonic bursts out of the giant golden ring with a subtle 3D sheen. This model is smoother, bolder, symmetrical, and more blemished as ever before. And that smirk? That's just not the classic attitude anymore. That's confidence. The lighting is richer, using the soft gradients from Sonic quills and the gloves that for 1994 was very next level. This was Sega using every last drop of the power of the Genesis and the lock-on tech had to offer. Even the background clouds had depth and motion, and subtly sliding gave us pseudo-parallax effects. Sonic no longer is just a sprite, but he's a hero in a world of weight and dimension. Dimensions are a huge part of Sonic 3's model. In the actual in-game sprite, there are some major upgrades here. I mean, oh boy. Sonic 1 was a base sprite with about 48 by 48 pixels. In Sonic 2, there were slight tweaks and more clarity to add tighter proportions, but in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, we're talking about 56 times 56 pixels with increased color depth and subtle pixel shading. Even if you're not incredibly knowledgeable on the way pixels and triangles work, you can still tell by just looking at the model itself and the expression that comes with it. Sonic's limbs are longer and sleeker now. There are no more stubby arms, his quills are more structured, his eyes are more expressive, and the shoes? They've got a defined white stripe that show a consistent shine frame by frame, and this is Sonic becoming an action figure and not just the cartoon blob that he's been in his previous games. Despite the cool radness of Sonic, we've never seen Sonic in a position where his dimensions fully come out in part to play. There's more shading on the gloves and socks. There's multi-frame idle animations where he taps his foot impatiently, leans back and even nods his head. And the quills now slightly shift as he stands, the subtle animation touch that gives this breath and life. Sonic's model is no longer just reactive, but it's performative, and every frame oozes identity. Now, I know, most people run to Hydrocity or Ice Cap, but let's do something different. Let's head into the Neon Observatory of Carnival Night Zone. Why? Because this is the most perfect chaos test for Sonic's model. You've got the moving backgrounds, multicolour spotlights, bouncing balls, rotating cylinders, and the physical breaking balloons, and the lighting cast implied reflections on Sonic's model. Whilst there are no real lighting engines in this game, the brighter palette of Sonic's sprite in Sonic 3 and Knuckles helps him stand out without clashing, and the huge technical advancement for the 16-bit system. And watch how Sonic moves through vertical sections, bouncing off red barrels, we'll get to that, and sliding on balloons. Every motion is met with contrast and a context-sensitive animation. She stretches upwards during the spring launches, he squishes slightly when bouncing, and even leans forward when caught in air gusts or fans. And these secondary animations weren't present in Sonic 1 or 2. They give him weight and presence in every action possible. Now let's talk about ropes, vines, pulleys, zip lines, the true test of Sonic flexibility. In earlier games, Sonic just clung to things, but in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, when Sonic grabs a rope or swings to a bar, his body dynamically stretches. His feet dangle, his arms rotate, and his body turns slightly with the arc of the swing. This is a game where Sonic doesn't just use objects, but he interacts with them in a way that feels fluid and responsive. Watch him hang from a spinning hook. He swings with momentum, and as he lets go, there's a brief recoil animation. He tucks his body mid-air before unrolling into a running stance. That's polish. That's personality. Here's what makes Sonic 3 and Knuckles special. Every level doesn't just exist, but it tells a story. The background in this game is rich, layered, and dense. Let's return to Carnival Night for a second. The sky isn't static, it's scrolling, showing the distant rides and fireworks. There's a tiled depth, with character layers and moving more independently, giving Sonic's sprite an incredible sense of foreground weight. Now let's compare that to the Sonic's slightly more saturated blue tone in this game. It helps him cut through the visual noise, and the devs understood the importance of the color psychology and the visual contrast. That's professional level art direction, and it directly benefits the model. Also, Sonic's getting older, so this is him moving into his Dreamcast era. Sonic isn't just alone anymore, and that matters, as this is the first game where character models have to coexist side by side. Knuckles has a shorter, stockier model, and this contrast makes Sonic feel faster, looser, and more aerodynamic. And what's important here is the animations between Sonic and Knuckles sync up logically. They both have climbing, running, crouching, jumping, but with each unique flair, and the duality of Sonic's model is forced to be even more distinct. His running animation is slightly wider in stance, and his jump arcs feel a little bit more elongated, or to emphasize the difference. The glow up. In Sonic 3 and Knuckles, nothing's short of a flex. His color shifts from yellow to almost golden white due to the higher brightness values. His spikes are now permanently up, constantly flickering with energy, and the model includes custom frames for mid-air hovering, instead of just reusing spin frames. He blinks even faster this time, bounces off the ground differently, and even gets a fist bump victory pose for when you clear a stage. This isn't just Sonic at a narrative weight, not just a bonus, but the culmination of the visual journey. And with the inclusion of Hypersonic, this only adds more weight to the game and makes it feel insanely powerful. We're hoping for Hypersonic to return. Sonic 3 and Knuckles isn't just a technical upgrade, but it's a character statement. This is where Sonic grows more mature in his visual identity, the model gains precision, range, and weight, the animation becomes cinematic in its 2D sprite peak, not just functional, and every level test of Sonic's sprite in new and exciting ways. If Sonic 1 was the birth, Sonic 2 was the breakout, and then Sonic 3 is the Blue Bird's artistic coming of age in its classic form. Alright, let's pause history for a second. We're in 1998. The Dreamcast in Sega Hell's Merry Pass to reclaim the console dominance, and Sonic Adventure is the headliner, the first true 3D mainline Sonic game, and with that leap into the third dimension comes something huge. A completely reimagined Sonic model. This wasn't just a higher resolution sprite, this was a fully polygonal Sonic, complete with moving limbs, expressive eyebrows, and physic-bound quills. The polygon count in Sonic's model in Adventure clocks in at roughly 1,500 polygons. And that's modest by today's standards, but back then, this was revolutionary. Compare that to the 100 pixels used for his sprite in Sonic 3. This is a generational leap, and it's obvious in transition from 2D to 3D. What this gave us was full 3D rotation, camera tracking, skeletal animation, and real-time lighting of the first time ever. Sonic finally stepped into the 3D spotlight, and somehow, he didn't trip over his new noodle-thin legs. Let's break this down from the Dreamcast tech demo. In his shoes, the red and white sneakers got their boldest redesign here. Chunkier, glossier, and now with visible straps and trends. These weren't just speed shoes, they looked like they were made by Nike for gods. And the quills are now arced backwards and dynamically swayed with movement. In motion, they trail behind Sonic like speed indicators, and at rest, they stick out like a porcupine bedhead. His limbs are stronger and his body is more noodle-like. Not a bad thing, it emphasizes his elastic and fast as light personality, like a cartoon character being pulled by inertia. Emerald green with the genuine emotion, rage, joy, fear, sass. This was the first time Sonic's model really acted. And yes, it's a little cursed, it's either glued to the left cheek or the jumps around like a mid-place sticker during cutscenes, but Sonic's mouth is expression over precision, right? This is going to be tied up in the next couple Sonic games, so we don't have to actually exactly worry about this. With Sonic's ears and nose, it's more refined, pointier, with subtle shading adding depth to even the low polygon budgets. And with the belly and torso, that classic Peach torso was now well-rounded and a separate mesh. The slight roundedness gave Sonic a lean but athletic silhouette. Not a ball, not a noodle, just tight. The spin dash in 3D is where Sonic's adventure truly flexes. You feel in charge before blasting forward like a hedgehog cannonball, and what makes it feel so good? The weight. Sonic's model tenses, squashes slightly, and you hear that iconic rubbing sound before boom, a blur of motion. Animations bend fluidly, from dash to roll to bounce, and it's not just one move, it's a kinetic language. Also worth noting, Sonic's acceleration is S tier here. There's this beautiful middle ground between momentum and control, and the model helps sell it. He leans into turns, his arms trail around at top speed, and if you run downhill, you really pick up speed. The model reacts with slight camera tilt and head bobbing, adding to that juicy sense of velocity. Oh boy, let's address the chili dog in the room. Yes, the cutscenes are janky. Sonic's mouth wraps around like he's trying to escape his face. The lip sync, chaotic, and yet there's charm. Why? Because the animation still reflects Sonic's personality as Sonic crosses his arms, looks smug, shrugs with exaggerated motion, and those animations were keyed with love. They give Sonic sass, not just the lines. He moves like a cocky teenager with the weight of the world and none of the stress. And somehow, it just works. But obviously there would needed to be a lot of animation work to make this scene flushed out. But a lot of people don't talk about this. No level better showcases Sonic's model than Emerald Coast. Blue skies, white beaches, and palm trees swaying. It's pure freedom fantasy. Sonic's model here bounces and flows effortlessly with the terrain. His quills react to ramps, his feet pivot mid-air, and the transitions between jumping, rolling, dashing, and running feel like water. And even when the white orca whale chases you, yes, that scene, Sonic's model is calm and collected, no panic, just flow. Just how Sonic always has been. The environmental lighting also reflects off of Sonic's blue fur subtly, something that elevates him just above being a moving object. He feels real, present, in the moment, almost like he's in the scene, not on top of it. Now, the controversy, the DX remaster model. Higher resolution, technically yes, better proportions, not really. Sonic's model looks plasticky with glossier finishes and a chunkier mouth, and the expressiveness was reduced and the animation didn't quite match the model's frame. It's a prime example of the upgrades that lose the soul of the original design, and the OG Adventure model had more quills and more quirks, but that's not what made it feel alive. Here's a brain-breaking detail. Many players think Sonic Adventure 1 feels freer in gameplay and more momentum-based than Sonic Adventure 2. But here's the catch. It's not just physics, it's the model. Sonic Adventure 1 feels more animated, has more bounce in his running form, and more lean in his jumps, and a longer limb movement. It gives the illusion of freedom. Adventure 2, by contrast, is snappier, with tighter animation loops and a more complicated, compact levels, giving players that on-rails feel. But physics-wise, not a big difference. The model and animation change how the gameplay feels, not how it works. It's a debate I'd love to see in the comments. Drop your take below. We're here, let's talk about linearity. People often blame Sonic Forces for being way too linear, but linearity isn't inherently bad. City Escape from Sonic Adventure 2 is super linear, but it's awesome. The issue with Forces, the levels are a boost button hallway with zero reaction time, and no meaningful platforming, and a model that doesn't interact with the world. Sonic's gameplay shines when the model, environment, and the level design all feed into each other. Adventure 1 excels here. Forces, not so much. The pros and cons of the Sonic Adventure model shows that Sonic is expressive with lively animations, but despite the technical limitations, is used to its maximum potential. The great blend of the stylized and proportioned design, the real-time lighting adds dimensionality, the movement animations sell speed and freedom, and the quills and limbs feel physically reactive. And despite limitations of the time, this model speaks Sonic. Now, we're not talking about the animation, which could be completely different in another video, but those need a lot of work. As the cons are that the cutscenes are mathematically awkward, the polygon counts limit the finer detail, and the DX version stiffens into weird plastic. The final thoughts on Sonic Adventure's model is that it's rough, raw, experimental, but iconic. This was the introduction to the peak of 3D Sonic. It walks the line between expressive cartoon and heroic speedster, and every quirk to his personality, every animation beat reinforces his identity despite not being fully flushed out, and especially in the cutscenes. It didn't just usher Sonic into 3D, but it made Sonic feel fast, wild, reckless, and free. And the voice actors definitely helped in this regard. If the Genesis era Sonic was punk cartoon athlete, and Sonic Adventure Sonic, he was just a 3D rockstar in his prime. And that's the energy we will never forget. Let's not mince words. Sonic Adventure 2 is where the cool Sonic lives. No chili dogs, no weirdly long dialogue pauses, just soap shoes, explosions, and a space colony slowly crashing into Earth while Sonic dropkicks Bio-Lizard with chaos energy. But beneath the melodrama lies something incredibly important. Sonic's 3D model in SA2 is one of the most balanced, expressive, and gameplay perfect character designs in platformer history, and we see this in the evolution up to Sonic Unleashed. Let's tear it down piece by piece with glorious polygonal piece. From the very first frame of City Escape, you know something's different. Sonic isn't just a model anymore, he's a presence. And let me show you the anatomy of this. Increased in SA1, especially in the battle version of the GameCube, we're talking roughly 2,000 plus polygons for Sonic, which allowed for smoother curves, more expressive joints, and a less angular Dreamcast Boxman vibe. The proportions was taller, leaner, cleaner, and cutter. This Sonic was built for his own silhouette, as his spikes are longer and sharper, and arc with the aerodynamic fins. His arms are more detailed, his chest flares out slightly to give him more of that lean athlete look, and so it shows the complete complexity of Sonic. Still, with the iconic green, but now sharper, more focused eyes, Sonic always looks like he's in control, no matter how close he is to being vaporized by the Bio-Lizard. And it still warps to the left side like a sassy emoji sticker with his mouth. But the facial proportions are tighter, making expressions feel more intentional, rather than the oops, we ran out of frames. And despite the animation still being very poor at the time, the model speaks of something bigger than anything the animation could ever match. Shoes, soaps. Yes, the legendary soap brand sneakers, complete with grind plates. These weren't just for marketing, but they were built into the gameplay. Sonic's model literally has his feet bent over his ankles and arced into a specific way for the grinding animation. It's the first time that Sonic's footwear wasn't just fashion, but it was function. A rare crossover of aesthetic design meeting game mechanic integration. Sonic's model in SA2 doesn't just exist in its levels, but it moves with them. The animation's physics and reactions are fine-tuned to the environment's chaos. Grinding, Sonic's body leans, shifts, and recoils dynamically. His arms go out for the balance, and the animation blends change based on speed, angle, and the grind surface. It makes you feel like you're surfing with rail energy. The jumping and homing attack is stiffer than SA1, but with purpose. Sonic's jump now has a snap to it, launching him with urgency. The homing attack uses a slightly hunched pose with one arm trailing behind. It's part of an acrobat, part torpedo. The somersault is something where you break boxes and sneaking through tight gaps. Watch Sonic's legs tuck perfectly under him. It's the animation that feels sharp and responsive. And the visual cue? A full body blow with a whip crack sound. It's beautiful. With the bounce bracelet, Sonic curls into a compact ball mid-air and slams downward. This model was rigged to crunch inward mid-air, making it look forceful. Again, function fused with form. And the auto animations, yes, they still rule. Sonic taps his foot, crosses his arm, looks side to side. The model acts like a teenager with a sketched-in attitude. So, there's a debate between the Dreamcast and the GameCube version, SA2 versus Battle. So the GameCube version of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle brought visual upgrades but also some quirks. There are higher polygons on each characters, there are more rounded meshes on ears, gloves, and Sonic's fingers that have more curve. Shadows are now model accurate rather than simple blobs, and subtle and environmental lighting maps were added to give the characters a more grounded look. But unfortunately, something suffered. The lighting shading of the Dreamcast were dropped. This leads to slightly flatter characters, especially in dark levels. The blurry shadows due to the lower res render targets on the GC hardware, and the few cutscene animations are lost or misaligned, and the timing can feel weird, even with some facial expressions missing the original punch. Still, Battle Sonic is visually iconic, and it's a clean version, one that became the blueprint for the later 3D games like Heroes and Shadow the Hedgehog. And Sonic in setting and how the model reacts to the level design, as Sonic's posture adapts in City Escape as you blast down San Francisco's inspired hill. You can see his arms trailing, his body leaning forward at the steep angles, and his quills bouncing. The shoes quite literally spark against the street, and when you land from a height, not just detail, but kinetic storytelling. Also, in Metal Harbor, the launchpad sections push Sonic into intense aerial movement. His model goes on full adrenaline, arms behind, legs taut. The rocket chase, his quills ripple from the wind drag, and these tiny details make the scene feel cinematic, even with the early 2000s tech. Final rush and final chase. The model becomes more with the gravity-defying rails. The grind physics combined with the angular camera turns and shows the model from every angle, and enhances Sonic's visual identity. Even the gravity cylinder sequences in the final chase test the camera model and the model rigging. Sonic's legs reorientate based on the gravity pull, a subtle but vital animation layer. Now, let's crank on the Chaos Dial with Super Sonic. His model is a direct transformation of the base Sonic, but with the new quill orientation, the gold sheen, and the energy particle effects. His polygon increase is massively upscaled, and his animation set changes slightly with a more rigid godlike posture. The fight physics aren't perfect, but the model sells it with the high frequency, the idle movement, and the trailing effects. However, Super Sonic is so fun in this game. The lighting in the BioLizard arena reflects off of Super Sonic dynamically. The space-flooded stage casts a pale blue hue that makes him glow like a divine missile. With the BioLizard fight, the final fight is the ultimate test of the model readability under duress. The enormous space setting, check. Floating platforms, check. Moving camera angles from 5 different dimensions, check. And yet, Sonic's model remains instantly readable at every turn, thanks to the color contrast of the gold against black space, the silhouette clarity against those quills, and the dynamic lighting bounce on Super Sonic's textures. There's a lot of pros with the SA2 model as there's a sleek, mature redesign. It feels less blocky, real-time physics integration with grind balance and jump arcs, higher polygon count which means more detailed faces, limbs, and shoes, and the shoes equal gameplay. Finally! The consistent across all of the animations and have fewer wonky moments than SA1. However, the GameCube version lost some of its shading charm. The occasional clipping issues, quills and walls and true love, and the rigid jump animations that can feel stiff compared to the looser SA1 vibe. Sonic 2 gave us a complete, refined, iconic Sonic. Every curve, animation, and system was carefully tuned to give Sonic a more of an agile and modern feel, and a more of a world-saving hero. His model didn't just look cool, but it was cool because of how it played. This wasn't just Sonic in 3D, this was Sonic mastering 3D. This model was expressive, the animations were confident, and the gameplay integrated down to the shoes on his feet. Yes, there were some criticisms about the animation, and definitely there could have been a lot of work done with the animation at its time. However, the model is nothing than a marvel and will definitely show in later games, and will set the new standard with Sonic Unleashed. From the streets of City Escape to the stars above Earth, Sonic's SA2 model and is the definitive 3D Sonic for a whole generation of Dreamcast fans. And that is something that even BioLizard couldn't destroy. Now, onto Sonic Heroes. Released in 2003, Sonic Heroes is Sega's most fully multi-platform 3D Sonic title, leaping from the cozy familiarity of the Dreamcast to the GameCube, PlayStation 2, Xbox, and PC. It ditched the more grounded aesthetic of the adventure series to something brighter, glossier, and team-based. But with that shift came significant changes to the character models, shorter, chubbier, and world building with lighting and animation logic. And what we got was rubbery, cartoon-like Sonic with both delighted, puzzled fans, as this model didn't look amazing? Now, let's go with the plastification of the blue blur. Yes, Sonic Heroes model is technically a step down from the SA2 in polygon count, but it's also a purposeful stylistic shift, as Sonic Heroes Sonic has 1,700 triangles, down from the 2,000 plus in Sonic Adventure 2. The reason for the reduction was, with 3 characters on screen at all times, plus occasional NPCs, Sonic Heroes traded complexity for CPU balance and framerate stability. The face topology was flattened, as Sonic cheeks are less pronounced with smoother baby-face silhouettes, and the eyelids are also part of the mesh rather than the separate animatable shells like it was in SA2. In SA2, there was jagged, aerodynamic, reminiscent wind-torn fins of the spines, designed to catch the light in motion, and in Heroes it was stiff, vertical, and pulled from Sonic and the Fighters. Less expressive, but easier to rig and animate across all platforms. They don't bounce or sway, they simply exist in a rigid battle stance to pose at all times. And the choice here wasn't just aesthetic, but it was a performance necessity. Yes, there was some squash and stretch, but the dynamic sprite modes would have been too taxing for the PS2's weak CPU and RAM bottleneck. Heroes was built using a new rendering engine, created in-house for compatibility across the multiple consoles. With material and lighting, Sonic's textures are bolder and more saturated than in SA2. The diffuse in only shading model with no normal maps, no complex specularity, and just harder lit vertex colors and baked shadows, and the result was a more plasticky rubber action figure Sonic that photographs beautifully under the bright light, but lacks the depth in shadowed environments. This game still uses the environmental light rigs, often multi-point sources, to create a hyper-saturated cartoony vibe, but this means lighting rarely matches the geometry around Sonic. He can look sun-drenched even in the caves. For example, in Egg Fleet, Sonic's model can appear blown out with the bloom-like shine, and even while standing under shadows cast by battleships. Now, for the good stuff, the animation. Bouncy, squashy, wacky. While the model took a hit in detail, the animation philosophy in Sonic Heroes was entirely reimagined, and this is where Sonic comes to life like a Looney Tune on sugar. Sonic's limbs elongate while jumping, his quills squash inward during spin attacks, his idle animations have feature snappy pop-ins, his eyes dart, arms jolt, hips sway, and like a fighting idle loop. And when you launch off the spring, Sonic stretches into a spaghetti noodle before snapping back into his ball form. This is pure Disney-style animation applied to a 3D action platformer. And this squash and stretch approach just breathes personality into the simpler model, making him feel alive, animated, and reactive to the physics, not just the scripts. I mean, even look at the way that he goes off of ramps. There were system limitations and platform comparisons. The GameCube and Xbox had 60 FPS as a target, and these versions benefit from the clean image, smooth frame pacing, and the better LOD handling. The full light-on effects with fewer shadow bugs. However, the PS2 had 30 FPS with inconsistent frame pacing, the texture resolution had a massive downgrade, and the LODs popped aggressively as Sonic's face will literally de-res mid-grind. The lighting model stripped back, the single ambient light source with baked vertex colors, and PS2 Sonic often looked like he was being laminated in a cellophane and dumped into a vat of Vaseline. It's rough. Forget Seaside Hill. Forget Grand Metropolis. If you want to see Sonic Heroes in its model in its true, freakishly expressive form, you must visit Hang Castle or Mystic Mansion. These two gothic nightmare levels are criminally underappreciated and offer a dynamic lighting changes mid-stage. In Hang Castle, entire rooms rotate or invert gravity. Sonic's model responds by shifting its idle pose, weight distribution, and the camera facing angles. Purple, green, and red lighting from the haunted candles and the ghostly torches cast bizarre shadows on Sonic's body, highlighting the shiny plastic sheen of his model, and when Sonic hits a dash panel in the dark room, the bloom on his model actually makes him look like a glow with a possessed Christmas ornament. This level demonstrates the limitations of the texture work as his face can flatten under the dim light, the power of squash and stretch jumping over ghosts and triggering long exaggerated leg falls, and the intentional visual identity of Sonic Heroes leaned into hyper, cartoony, full throttle, and kinetic. Super Sonic is now the apex of the sparkly cool. As in Heroes, he's something else. It's like an action figure on fire with aesthetically fully realized. In the appearance of the Golden Sparkle FX, there is a real-time particle layer flickering off his mesh, and the specular lighting is amped up. This Sonic doesn't just glow, but he radiates danger and has a golden aura around him. There is no bloom filter, but the bright yellow palette overrides all the ambient color grading. In motion, he's borderline blinding. And in gameplay, he's used only in the final fight with Metal Overlord, fully rigged flight animations as his arms tucked in with his quills rise slightly like flames, and the model stretches even more here. Think of him as a rubber band made of golden fury. Fans still debate this version as the best Supersonic design ever, and they might be right, but I have a counter argument for that. You'll see soon. Also, for a quick note, the models are also stored in .1 archives inside of a DVD root folder, and these archives contain the .bsp level geometry and, yeah, like Quake. MTL such as materials and skeletal rigs, and the TXD with textual bundles usually raw in indexed formats. Some elements are reused from the SA2 auto animations and HUD assets, but most of the models were rebuilt from scratch due to the multi-platform support. Sonic's run animation may feel adventure-y, but it was incredibly slippery. but it was reanimated using motion paths instead of inverse kinematics. Sonic Heroes is not just Sonic's best model, not even close in a technical sense, but it is animated better than some of Sonic's models and is stylized to perfection without the limits of the hardware. It was built with an understanding that exaggeration, clarity, and the model can overcome technical compromise. It's not a failure, it's a deliberate evolution, a playable Sonic cartoon that grins into the face of the 2003 era CPU throttling. Even when Sonic jumps into Mystic Mansion, his model screams the rubber mascot, but when he fights Metal Overlord as Super Sonic, he becomes a mythological golden rubber god, and sometimes that's more than enough. Oh boy, here we go. Let's talk about the most divisive, most beautifully flawed, it could have been incredible, but oh no, it tripped on its own ambition. Sonic design of all time. Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. Despite Sonic 06 being a technical mess, a tornado of bugs, glitches, and unfinished systems and weird romantic choices, you know the one, it actually houses what many fans argue is one of the best looking Sonic models in the entire series, and I've got to agree. It's not one of the most beloved games, but that model, that's high fashion Hedgehog and screams maturity. Even if it's not your personal favourite, there's an undeniable elegance and sophistication in the design that deserves a deep, loving dissection. So, into the havoc-riddled timeline, let's dive into the sleek, lanky mystery that is the Sonic's 2006 model. This model was a departure from the earlier stylizations, and this model looks less like a cartoon mascot and more like a fantasy anime protagonist that is constantly saying chili dog. He's taller, leaner, got legs for days, and is a very humanoid build. Think of a lanky teen athlete with a speed addiction, but still screams Sonic, if you don't count those weird, awkward cutscenes, and the entire context behind them. With the massive hands and feet, his gloves and shoes are big and chunky, especially his trademark soapish sneakers, balancing out the larger proportions and emphasizing impact in animations. With his spine design, the quills curve backward fluidly, almost mimicking flowing hair. Each spike looks aerodynamic, tailored to his motion blur design. With the narrow, sharp green eyes gone and the wide-eyed look of his SA2 days, these are almond-shaped intense, giving him a sleek, semi-serious vibe. It's Sonic basically after puberty. Sonic's green eyes now show the exact dimensions of Sonic's boldness. Now, for fur detail. This Sonic doesn't look painted, he looks grown. You'll notice the subtle fur textures baked into the diffuse map. It's not just the plastically smoothness of Heroes or the matte gradients of SA2. There's detail in the shadows and the spectacular edge lighting that adds to the touch of realism, a look befitting to the shores of the dusty ruins and the glossy water towns filled with the hyper-detailed humans. As the CGI model is practically Pixar tier for the era, incredibly detailed with eyes, fur, and lighting, fully rigged face with subtle expressions, brow movement, and dynamic eyelids, and realistic lighting interaction on the fur and the clothes, and even his gloves wrinkle with motion. And in this sentence, this could give Sonic a TED Talk, or do taxes, or marry a princess. But listen, this intro animation for Sonic 06 and the many CGI cutscenes are absolutely phenomenal, and I honestly wish that this would have been the full game. And it could have been replicated in gameplay to a tiny extent. I know there would have been technical limitations, but we've seen a lot of amazing animations throughout Sonic. The animations in 06 are pretty terrible. However, you can tell that the potential was there and the model is fantastic. It's impressive in form, but held back by the game's engine performance and the rush production. And in the in-game model, the texture quality is lower, with the fur detail blurred. The animation doesn't have squash and stretch, he just moves. It's pretty terrible, but his model is perfect, as he often appears shiny with specular glints that feel detached from the lighting conditions, which add to the rubber dough effect. However, we see that the animation and the style of Sonic can be fully realized in Sonic P06. Of course, not to the full extent of when the game was being developed, but these guys have made an awesome job. You should definitely check out Sonic P06, I'll leave it in the description to download. The animation was, well, falling apart. Sonic 06 used motion capture and then slapped it onto stylized characters without proper retargeting or refinement, and this results in strangely human yet inhuman movement. Sonic has the posture of a guy waiting in line at a DMV. His line jumping, grinding, and running animations all have minimal variation or dynamic posing. Everything is one-dimensional and locked into a static pose silhouette. Comparing this to SA2 where he leans, jumps, spins his limbs, stretches on landings, Sonic 06 just kinda does a thing and then resets. There's no quirky squash or stretch or an expressive follow-through, it's just mechanical, very lifeless. But that doesn't break the fact that I absolutely adore this model. But the model links to the animation itself, and I can't really place it that much higher because of the way that the model is represented in its animation style. It's like Sonic was motion captured by a guy doing his taxes while standing on a Roomba. and the art style was a hedgehog among men. Let's talk about the environment and the art direction, one of Sonic 06's most underappreciated strengths. There was a semi-realistic world design which I actually like. Sonic exists in a world of ornate castles, ancient ruins, and a glassy Venice-inspired canal, with desert temples, and to match this, Sonic's model needed to look like he belonged in a semi-realistic world without breaking the uncanny valley, be tonally mature, hence the fur detail, sharper eyes, and a more muted blue hue, and be stylistically neutral with blending cartoony stylization with realistic lighting and material shaders. Did it work? Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. In the CGI, definitely beautiful. In the gameplay, he often looked like a rubber action figure dropped into a Final Fantasy XV cutscene. But this is where it clicked. Like in Kingdom Valley, it really clicked. Let's talk about one of the best levels in the game. Sonic 06 had a phenomenal level design for the most part, except that Silver the Hedgehog Ball mission, as this level of Kingdom Valley is the poster child for what the Sonic 06 model was meant to do. The high winds ruffle of Sonic's quills, the god rays of beams through stone archways capturing the spectacular highlights on his gloves and shoes, and his colour palette pops against the grayscale ruins and the stormy skies, letting his design do all the talking. He feels like a supernatural being out of a myth, not just a random cartoon mascot doing loop-de-loops. It's dramatic, cinematic, and damn near poetic. With technical shortcomings, there was an ambition which outpaced the hardware, as it was originally meant for the 15th anniversary centerpiece, which meant that the game was rushed and unfortunately was terrible. The development time was cut in half when the team split to work on the Wii's secret rings, and the animation, shaders, and texture maps were left unfinished or unoptimized. With the uncanny valley, Sonic's model is expressive enough to expect a full animation, but the stiff performance makes it feel awkward and off-putting, and when standing next to hyper-realistics like Princess Elise, the disconnect becomes jarring. Super Sonic isn't really much to talk about. I really adore the glow when he has this sort of bright torchlight inside of the model, but apart from that, there isn't really much crazy to talk about Super Sonic. But it is the first time we see this in its glorious model. Don't get me wrong, Super Sonic looks beautiful in the CGI cutscenes, but nothing really crazy in the spectacle of gameplay. And we can also just stop talking about this now. We don't want to go back to that cutscene. One of the coolest things about this model in particular is how people have given the love it never got in 2006. As in Project 06, fans have redesigned and re-rigged and reanimated the original Sonic 06 model with modern shaders and fluid squash stretch physics. When combined with model PBR lighting and correct IK rigs, the model comes to life with elegant, stylish and powerful stylistics. Turns out that Sonic 06 model wasn't the problem. It was the victim. The model is not perfect, it's not fluid, but it is beautifully proportioned, impeccably designed to fit its world, bold and very artistic, and foreshadowing of the future Sonic aesthetics as we see in Generations, Forces, and Frontiers especially. And ultimately, a model that deserved better animation, better lighting, and better treatment. It stands as a testament to what Sonic could be in a more grounded fantasy universe, even if the game around it is buckled under its own dreams. Now, we see this massively improve in Frontiers, and we're going to see this in Sonic X Shadow Generations. It's just going to take Sonic Team a bit of time to be able to adapt to this new level of art style. So no, Sonic 06 wasn't a success, but the model was pretty great. But the game just wasn't ready for that type of model, and, well, the game just wasn't ready in general. But I'm not going to bash Sonic 06 as much as it already has been bashed. This game is actually really fun when you just focus on the P06 remaster. If you want to go and check that out, I've linked it again in the description. Massive thank you to everyone who's been working on that. The team is awesome. I think it was a team. I'm not entirely sure if you want to check that out. Now, I thought I'd talk about this because obviously it's not really a game that I could really speak about. It's Sonic's in this game, but I thought I'd talk about the model misfire of Sonic in Shadow the Hedgehog. In 2005, Sonic the Hedgehog entered his edgy era with guns, grits, and Gratius Gravelly with voice acting, but amidst the smoke and chaos, there stood a model like any before. At approximately 8,600 polygons, this Sonic was a no-low poly poser. This was refined with hedgehog geometry, a sleek, stylized form built to pose next to the motorcycles and Glocks. Well, the chest, tuft, recontoured, the legs, longer, the fur, well, it was just textured-ish. Compared to the previous games, this Sonic was a runaway model, and if the runaway model was a shadow military base full of exploding aliens, and in the pre-rendered CGI cutscenes, Sonic looks pretty fantastic. His expressions were sharp, his eyelids actually worked, and his quills glistened under the light. And this was a hedgehog with emotion. Do we really need to speak about these CGI cutscenes? We know how they're going to end up. They're always incredible. let's talk about the actual game itself. If everything that came to a B-tier puppet showing inside of a washing machine, Sonic is very stiff. Stiff arm raise, walked into a wall. Hey, Shadow, you need help looking edgy? This model was powerful, but the animation, let's just say, motion capture isn't a miracle when the mocap actor forgets Sonic doesn't skip leg day. Look, I love the model, it's cool, but it's the Sonic I imagined in middle school fan art, but why did he run like his pants were stapled together? From a design perspective, it's very transitional, but this Sonic is evolving from a mascot to a myth. From a round and bouncy and sleek and cinematic design, I dig it. Even if he sometimes moves like a crash test dummy. Sonic in Shadow the Hedgehog was pretty okay. He was a tall drink of motion captured promise, stuck in a moody shooter with identity issues, but even then, he smirked confidently and told Shadow that we need to save the city. Here we go, my favorite Sonic game in terms of its animation, model, and design. Sonic Unleashed. CGI brilliance and the high poly hedgehog masterpiece. Mars Animation Planet knocked it out of the park with the Sonic Unleashed CGI intro, and honestly, it still holds up as a visual triumph today, and I argue that this is one of the best CGI presentations of how to do perfect animation. With the polygon count and model precision, this pre-rendered cutscene uses a high-resolution model not constrained by the console limits. His fur glows like silk, quills ripple in the wind, and the foot-long grin curves naturally as he speeds through the nighttime city lights. Watch his body flex when landing a jump, the legs compress, the chest dips, and then poof. Rebound energy sends Sonic skyward again. It's Disney level motion magic packed into 60 seconds. Or no, this is the new standard. Whenever we compare CGI animation, we should say that this is the bar for Sonic Unleashed level. There is cinematic sophistication with gorgeous camera pans, lens flares, dynamic depth of field, and moody lighting, all the elements that give this CG intro in scale of a feature film trailer. I don't know the exact budget of this entire animation. I heard it was around 2 to 20 million. I can't exactly know if you can confirm that in the comments. But regardless, this blows my mind today. 15 years later, and it's a powerhouse statement. Modern Sonic has arrived, and he's here to stay. Sonic Unleashed's in-game model is even fantastic too. It hits 19,887 triangles, the highest up to that point, nearly triple Sonic Adventure 2's model and double Unleashed's own successors. With smooth curves and defined anatomy from the quills to the gloves to the shoes, everything is crisp and rounded. His stance is extremely confident, grounded, athletic, and a perfect bridge between cartoony flair and realistic weight. This would be in my top 3. Innovative eye and mouth design, his mouth returns to the old school style face-of-face placement, enhancing the expressiveness essential for emotive dialogue scenes. The separate eyelids allow distinct blinks, squints, and full emotional range. This was a template, a legacy that feeds right into Sonic colors and the generation's visuals. Sure, the cutscenes still use those inhuman models, but it still looks way better aesthetically and the model still looks absolutely divine. The in-game walk and boost animations have an ultra-fluid and alive feel, with the idle walk and the look arounds, and even when not moving, Sonic bounces on his heels, his quills twitch, head tracks the camera, and there is a pure character presence. Now there's a run stage with cycles. There are 3 distinct stages that actually have perfection. This is something we haven't seen yet, even post-Frontiers. There is a jog, arms pumping with a slight forward lean, the acceleration with the legs blur, the quills trailing behind, and the boost as Sonic trucks forward, his legs vanish into the speed blur, and the quills streamline aggressively. This is not only mechanically, but also incredibly impressive for 2008. The distinct visuals and the gameplay pressing boost slides Sonic into a speed bullet, complete with motion blur. Every step, twitch, and launch is visually communicated with velocity and joy. Now, I know a lot of you are Sonic fans that are watching this video, but I thought I want to compare Sonic Unleashed to another game, Batman Arkham Knight. If you were to ask both of these franchises when these games could release, a lot of people could say these could be ended up in modern day. Of course, to a lesser extent, they do look like they've aged, but Sonic Unleashed, all it needs is just to be upscaled and boom, you've got a game that looks absolutely phenomenal. Yes, the graphics are way better in Sonic X Shadow Generations and definitely in Frontiers, but the art style itself and the way the game actually looks on your TV is nothing more than a joy. Every step, twitch, launch is visually communicated with velocity and joy. And Supersonic is energy realized. Supersonic gets the ultimate model upgrades as his spikes remain rigidly upward, radiating power. The textures glow, the fur lightens, the shoes gleam, and the spectacle highlight pulses. The tight, confident animation shows with his light bounce when he's idle. and the swift flight mode, the head height, and the regal edge launch transformation. He feels like a shattering upgrade and everything looks awesome about Sonic. Now, we've also got another model to talk about. This is the first game where it becomes a little bit interesting as we go into the Werehog model, raw and atmospheric. We can't ignore the Werehog, and it has around 18,000 to 500 polygons, with broad shoulders, muscular arms, and wolf jaws. It's sculpted for details, animated with muscle bulges and real-time animations that anchored him to the moonlit levels. This was peak Sonic animation in every single aspect possible. His fight animations are visceral, claws smack, punches compress his torso, hiccups from combo blows, recoil, combat. The whole idea of his arms stretching was complete genius. It's a raw visual contrast to regular Sonic. There is emotional range too. Grimace, roar, fatigue. This was Dark Fantasy Sonic done completely right. This game is incredible. And the best part about it, the game is actually fun. The levels are beautifully lit. The warm tropical sunsets, neon cityscapes, and lush jungles. The lighting rigs bounce off of this model and reflect off of the shading planes on his shoes and gloves, making Sonic look like he's been there. Comparing it to 06's grayness, Unleashed drenches Sonic in vibrancy, a rich dynamic palette, and puts every past 3D title to shame. There are some cons though, as there are some performance drops in the Werehog levels, but honestly, I don't even want to go into the whole performance in this game, because yes, it was definitely a stupid choice, but it's just something that can always be optimized and changed, and that is something that will definitely be in the future Sonic games, and I definitely see ourselves getting an Unleashed remaster. Sonic Unleashed's model wasn't just a stat increase, but it was a statement. This is the record-breaking polygon detail with emotional flexible animation, iconic redesign elements with the side mouths and trailing quills, and how the quills move in the air as the distance between Sonic and his body comes with the boost. The expert camera lighting synergy, and pair it with the CGI intro, the expressive gameplay avatar, and the bold duality of the daylight versus the hedgehog moonlit beast, and Unleashed stands as the most polarizing, visually ambitious, and most technically realized Sonic title ever. Oh, here we go. Sonic Colors, the vibrant candy-coated rollercoaster ride throughout outer space. While it never definitely reached the model animation majesty of Sonic Unleashed, it still kept things mostly solid and functional. This one's a sugar rush with a side of polygonal critique. The model in Sonic Colors is essentially a tweaked down version of the Unleashed model, scaled and simplified for the Wii's, shall we say, mellow hardware. I've never understood why Sonic would have ever been on the Wii. The polygon count is not officially documented, but estimated around 8,000 to 10,000 triangles. And what changed? There was a lower resolution texture map, especially notable for Sonic's fur and gloves. There's a slightly stiffer joint in deformation during jumps and turns, and there's a simplified eye reflection on the shading. Shadows on his face sometimes vanish into the Wii fog, and despite this, the model holds itself together quite nicely. Sonic still looks like Sonic, but with just less pizzazz and fewer polygons taking you on every step. What Colors lacked in raw horsepower, it made up for in personality, as the game simplified the cartoony art direction allowed for Sonic's model to shine without too much light complexity. Of course, I hate the voice acting and direction in this game, but the animation isn't too bad. The bright colors, cel shading vibes, and the vivid environmental palettes hid some of the limitations of the model. The environments like Starlight Carnival and the Aquarium Park were so dazzling you almost didn't notice Sonic's slightly plasticky sheen. And this game knows that it was on the Wii, and it plays to that strength with exaggerated colors, tight compositions, and minimalistic designs. Smart. The animations were very stiff, but functional. They were decent. Compared to Unleashed, Sonic's animations feel like they were more pre-rendered and serial commercial. They were just snappy, but they lacked flow really. The run cycle was a smooth 30 FPS loop with minimal body flex, without Sonic Colors Ultimate obviously, and Sonic's spine doesn't curve much, and the stretch in his legs is limited. The jump and homing attack is functional but lacks the anticipated squash and stretch release energy that Unleashed nailed. Sonic throws his arms back and leans forward with his classic pose, but the energy doesn't quite snap like it did in Unleashed. The idle animations have been massively reduced, less bounciness, fewer quirky moments, and Sonic isn't tapping his foot anymore, he's just waiting for the Wii remote to reconnect. This gives Sonic the impression of a well-behaved Sonic, but not a particularly expressive one. Super Sonic looks better on paper, but you can also unlock Super Sonic in Colors, but there's no cutscene transformation, there's no model changes beyond the golden recolor, the quills don't really rise crazily, there's no golden aura, no attitude boost, and worst of all, you can't even use him in boss fights or special levels. Boo! This feels more like a checkbox unlock than a true visual reward. Not a major selling point, unfortunately. Talking about you, Sonic Forces 2. I mean, putting it behind a paywall was something crazy I never knew Sega would even do. Sonic Colors Ultimate was the remaster that also forgot to polish Sonic, and when Sonic Colors Ultimate was announced, the fans expected one thing: fix the Wii limitations, let Sonic's model finally pop. But nope. The same Wii era base model, just upscaled and filtered. There were lighting updates that were inconsistent, and in some scenes Sonic looked way waxy or way too glossy. There were animation bugs reportedly of janky idle frames, T-pose glitches, and oddly timed movements. Not ideal for a definitive version. There were cutscenes that were not reanimated, so all the facial expressions stayed stuck in that Wii era uncanny valley. I mean, even the AI upscaling was completely terrible. I think Generations can get a pass in the fact that the cutscenes were still pretty decent, and we got the entire Shadow Generations, but they could have just completely asked Miles at Animation Planet to completely remake these cutscenes and just make them incredibly flush. I mean, I can imagine the amount of views that would have done on YouTube. Basically, Ultimate just gave Sonic a fancier pair of shoes but forgot to clean his face. But one subtle win for Colors was the way that Sonic's model works with the wisps and power-ups. His pose was a silhouette shift depending on what power he was using, especially with the cube and draw forms. His color-coded lighting to confirm that sometimes Sonic bathes in Sonic in effects, cyan glow for laser and yellow for drill. However, the rigidity of the base model reflects how far those transformations go visually. They're effects, not body transformations. Still, the interactivity is fun and gives the illusion of a more dynamic model than it actually exists. Pros are that it's visually cohesive with the art direction, and the model doesn't stand out in a bad way. It still retains Sonic's core identity and the expressiveness within the Wii's limitations, and the wisps bring the color variety and the effects overlay into the otherwise simplistic model. Cons are is that it's very little slosh and stretch in animation, and I'm not telling anyone at Sonic Team that you don't need to necessarily have squash and stretch, but with Sonic, first off, it works amazingly, and secondly, this game has nothing beyond that. It could have just been something that made Sonic a little bit more expressive. I don't even mind if we don't have squash and stretch. I just think it works very well for Sonic. Now, I'm the type of person who prefers the very realistic art direction, such as in Sonic Frontiers. I like Sonic being a lot more mature and serious in the modern games, and in the classic games, Sonic is a lot more goofier and more, I guess you could say, cartoonish and more for a lesser mature audience. However, I still think you can make squash and stretch whilst making Sonic into the badass hero that he is. Sonic feels more like a wind-up toy than a living, moving being in Colors. The model lacks texture detail and definition. Super Sonic is functionally and visually underwhelming, and the remaster of Ultimate failed to fully upgrade the model or fix janky animations. The final model is okay. It's a compromise, still charming and sharp for its time, but scaled back from the visual firework of Unleashed. And while the art direction helps hide its age, the model itself has a ceiling, both literally and creatively. It works, but it doesn't wow. Sonic Generations was a tribute to the 20 years of Sonic the Hedgehog. It was a landmark title that brought together the best of classic and modern Sonic in one cohesive, visually striking package. From the polygon counts to boost mechanics, trick animations and nostalgic level design, Generations was crafted with reverence and precision, showcasing the evolution of both Sonic's style and function. With Modern Sonic was the hero defined. Modern Sonic in Generations features a polygon count of 16,173 triangles, which places him slightly below the Unleashed model, but significantly above earlier games like Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic Heroes, obviously due to technical limitations. With the detailed polygon breakdown, the head was 5,118 polygons, the mouth was 977 polygons, the hand was 1,054 polygons, and the body was 1,982 polygons. Each of these segments contributes to the model's overall expressiveness and polish, and his eyes are large and green, his spikes are stylized and the angled back for motion, and his mouth retains the iconic side mouth design, reinforcing the expressive charm that dates back to the Dreamcast era. The design philosophy is that it's honoring the past but streamlining the present, as the modern Sonic model is clearly a refinement of the Unleashed design, but it preserves much of the anatomy and accuracy and the dynamic structure, but with a smoother, more animated feel. It was built to support the fluidity, responsiveness, and the freedom of movement, especially in a 3D space. It's pretty good. Very, very good in this game. However, I still think Unleashed takes the win. There is a sleek silhouette in Generations that everything flows down from the quills to the shoes. It's very aerodynamic without looking too realistic. It has subtle textures where the gloves have visible seams. The shoes reflect the lights in subtle ways that suggest a material variation. And Sonic is also very emotionally expressive in this game. His Facial animations are fine-tuned for the in-game engine cutscenes, and his eyebrows shift dynamically, the eyelids blink independently, and his mouth stretches for exaggerated expressions. And thank God they stopped using those humans to animate the cutscenes. Boosting freestyle tricks and ramp animations, as one of Generation's greatest strengths is how it integrates Sonic's movement animations and how his levels have interactions. With the boost mechanic, when you hit boost, Sonic tucks in, arms behind his back and knees forward, creating a compact high velocity silhouette like we've seen in Unleashed. But there's a dynamic motion blur and even the chromatic ripple to emphasize speed. Of course, the drift in Sonic Unleashed was incredible and I loved it so much, but the one in Generations just seems so cold and clean. I love it so much. His quills flow backwards and slightly bounces, giving the subtle stretch motion, while Unleashed still reigns supreme in the sheer visual velocity. Generations comes very close, but it's still Unleashed for the win. Inspired by Unleashed, the trick system allows Sonic to launch off ramps and perform mid-air poses, backflips, somersaults, spins, and side twists. And what sets Generations apart is how snappy and responsive these tricks actually feel. They're well timed with input, and the animations are cleanly interpolated. Tricks are even varied, depending on your momentum and the launch angle. Sonic performs spins on steeper ramps, flips on horizontal jumps, and multi-twists when moving fast enough. Obviously the boost kind of mitigates all of this, but it's still cool to see in some ways when you actually remove the boost from boost games themselves, which is another issue that we could speak in another video. Classic Sonic has an old school modern twist, as obviously he is younger Sonic. 6,000 to 7,000 triangles, and while not confirmed by the same level of specificity as modern Sonic, classic Sonic is clearly a lower poly, but purposely so. His stubby limbs, chubbier proportions, and mono eye with the classic black dot pupils mirror with Sonic 3's sprite design. He feels like he's living a sprite animation but having a satisfying snap to them, mimicking the limited frame style of the Genesis games while still operating in the 2.5D environment. His spin dash curls him to a perfect round ball, and his jump arc features the spin dash squash and stretch effects that make the spin dash satisfying to execute. The subtle differences from the 16-bit era, as the other animations are more advanced. He taps his foot with varying intensity and looks towards the screen and even reacts to stage hazards. His physics are refined to feel like Sonic 2 but polished to modern standards, and this is where classic Sonic extremely shines. Some people argue that he feels heavy in Generations, but I just love how his model is just so incorporated into the real aesthetic of the modern era. Even modern Sonic shines in City Escape, as this is the level where modern Sonic absolutely dazzles. As soon as the stage begins, Sonic sprints down with a wide boulevard with flowing camera angles, entering rails, ramps, and car dodging sequences on a board. The boost paths are intentionally wide, encouraging how flow-based gameplay where the model's responsiveness shines. And this is also built around the momentum, reaction, and letting Sonic weave through traffic and leap off vertical walls and slide under barriers. The snowboard section uses Sonic's body momentum as he leans left and right, kicks up all of the different types, and shifts weight fluidity, showcasing the perfect blend of model animation and physics. Another thing was classic Sonic's best, as we see this in Sky Sanctuary. As classic Sonic's spinball animation is tight and crisp with the perfect bounce and the physics that when he hits walls, the loop-de-loops, the teleportation devices, the springboards, and the ledge grabs all benefit from the strong hit squash physics. Of course, not as expressive as Unleashed, but giving the weight to every movement. His low poly model allows for the incredibly fast rendering in side-scrolling sections, which is key to maintaining the snappy feel. When modern Sonic becomes Super Sonic, the animation shift is dramatic. His spikes glow and rise upwards, forming sharper angular shapes. His body gains a subtle glow and shimmering aura under the light sources, and his transformation is spinning, flaring light with a rising pulse effect, and his boosted speed with unique trails, and shows sort of this magical dust. The actual model itself looks nothing more than remarkable, and I honestly love how they've transitioned it from Unleashed into Generations. In both modern and classic forms, Super Sonic is a love letter to the Genesis era, but in Generations, it's fully realized in 3D. Now, what holds it back from perfection? The running animation versus Unleashed is, well, Generations is smoother and cleaner in the sense that it feels more polished. Unleashed felt more elastic and alive, and the body stretch and the physics simulation in Unleashed felt a little bit more raw. And me personally, I much prefer the gameplay in Unleashed because it's a lot faster, but that's just a personal opinion. But objectively, if we look at it, Generations is more refined but slightly less exaggerated in terms of its model and animation. In environmental lighting, in certain levels like Planet Wisp, Sonic's model can appear flat due to the lighting limitations, and in classic Sonic's physics, some fans argue that classic Sonic doesn't exactly feel like he should in the Genesis trilogy. Momentum is slightly off and the air control is heavier than it should be. But I personally disagree, as I absolutely love classic Sonic in Generations. The final thoughts. Peak Sonic? Sonic Generations is a beautiful convergence point, the game that respects Sonic's 2D origins while modernizing him into 3D with care, style, and depth. The character models are expressive, and the animations are artful, and the gameplay is its tightest as it's been in the series. This is the closest that we've been in the Sonic franchise to perfection in both art and animation, not just peak Sonic, but for the peak character design in platformers overall. Unleash set the standard, and now Generations is following its legacy, and an amazing game as well. A more divisive entry in the series, and for good reason, Sonic Lost World. A misstep in style, identity, and Sonic's evolution. Sonic Lost World was a bold departure. Too bold, perhaps. Released in 2013 as a Nintendo exclusive on the Wii U and 3DS, it took Sonic in a direction few fans very expected. Even fewer embraced, and while not a broken game by any means, it just represents the confused identity crisis. This is an awkward blend of aesthetic changes with mechanical experiments. We were having such a great time in Unleashed, Generations, and even Colors, and a departure from the visual and gameplay legacy that had been refined across those games. Sonic's model, surprisingly, didn't really change much from Generations. It uses roughly the same mesh, but with just slight adjustments. The polygon count estimate is between 17,000 and 18,000 triangles, slightly more than Generations, and the model features more subtle cleanup in the topology to support these new animation styles, like parkour. But these updates are largely invisible to the player, and also just completely disregards the entire cool and sleek style of Sonic himself. The entire art style of this game is just a problem. The problem isn't even just the model itself, but it's how the model was used in this new environment and the animation system. And the story makes Sonic look like a complete joke in this game, which is why we kind of see this as the downfall of Sonic for a while. You can like this game, I'm not saying you can't, but it's definitely a game that had definitely betrayed the fans in the series. It was a misguided art style with bright, bland and babyish colors with the art direction. One of the most controversial aspects of Lost World. The environment design is made of geometric states, flying and floating cylinders, perfect cubes and checkerboard floors. Textures are flat, oversaturated and soft-edged, resembling a children's cartoon or a prototype level editor. The background lacks depth, fog, or complexity. This feels very little in atmosphere, tension, or dynamicism. Instead of the lush, sprawling worlds of Unleashed or Generations, we're given just a toy box of fake force worlds with no grit or sense of place, like a Mario clone. It feels more like an intentional regression to appeal to a younger audience, but in doing so, it alienates the older fans who appreciated the semi-realistic or stylized realism of the past games and the maturity that came with them, and I'm so glad they understood this in Frontiers. Sonic Team truly understands their fan base now and actually sort of invites more mature themes into the games. The Deadly Six enemies just feel like rejected villains from a TV show for children, over-designed yet underdeveloped with loud colors and no menace or subtlety, and seem like a joke from the previous characters that we fought like medieval knights and sun gods. If we see this in a gameplay aspect, this is a massive betrayal of modern Sonic. I get it was something that was made exclusively for the Wii, but we didn't know where Sonic was headed, and even after the successes of the past 3 Sonic games, it was just really weird for Sega to do this. And I guess it was to rival Mario. Here's why the real identity crisis happens, because Lost World tries to reinvent the wheel, and it ends up discarding everything that made modern Sonic work. The wall running in parkour, as Sonic can run on walls, leap between surfaces and scale structures using auto parkour. And while this adds verticality, the implementation is inconsistent, sluggy, and clunky. You often run into walls you didn't intend to climb, or fail to stick to walls you clearly aimed for, and the increased polygon count supports more dynamic animations, but they're rarely fluid, and the animation quality doesn't match the idea. The Super Peel Out, an iconic move from Sonic CD, makes a spirit return, and Sonic now has a run button separate from his base speed. And whilst it's visually neat, it's underutilized and poorly integrated. It lacks the satisfying sound design, kickback particles, level design, or the frame anticipation that made it pop in 2D, and it looks more like a placeholder animation than a meaningful polish mechanic. Still, it looks pretty good, and I like it. The identity crisis between Mario clones and classic confusion, as Sonic Lost World desperately wants to be something else, and most noticeably, it wants to be Mario Galaxy. Spherical level design? Check. Gravity-defying movement, puzzle platforming and spring bounce traversal, enemies with multiple hit phases and visual cues ripped from Mario, all check. The problem, Sonic is not Mario. He never was. I honestly have never understood about this debate of Sonic being compared to Mario. I understand in the sense that like they were both characters that came out around similar times and Sonic was an innate rival to Mario, but their gameplay styles have massively split throughout the years. Sonic is about momentum, flow, and aggression. Mario is about precision control and discovery, and in chasing Nintendo's style, Lost World sheds its its identity entirely. Modern Sonic up until this point has matured into a more story-driven, stylistically bold character with more depth and complexity, and from the sweeping world building of Unleashed and the nostalgic homage of Generations, his tone skewed slightly older, teen audiences, and maybe even adults who grew up with Sonic himself. And Lost World discards this maturity, giving Sonic quippy juvenile dialogue in a cartoonish setting and a game design that feels afraid to commit to either nostalgia or evolution. It's neither a classic nor modern design, but it's a hollow imitation of both. With the character and tone disparity, Sonic's model feels out of place in the world around him. His sleek modern proportions clash against the bubbly soft world, and the characters' voices are over-exaggerated and the cutscene direction is stiff, and the tone direction of the game feels like a preschool TV show trying to mimic the edge of a Saturday morning cartoon. This is extremely uncanny. Sonic looks serious, confident, even edgy, yet he's navigating floating Lego blocks and arguing with villains who sound like Team Rocket. And why it's not a complete disaster, it's just disappointing. Now, to be fair, Lost World isn't broken. It's just functional, it has fans. The game does offer a unique control scheme with analog speed, a break from the boost gameplay and the players that are tired of it, and some genuine creative level ideas from Frozen Factory and Sky Road, but these ideas are never fully realized and don't even work for Sonic in the first place. Sure, this would be a pretty good spin-off game in terms of they actually tried and made it good, but the art style undermines its immersion. The level pacing is extremely inconsistent, and the model, while competent, feels wasted in its cheap feeling in the shallow world. Sonic Lost World is a game that had no idea what it wanted to be, and in trying to be everything, it just became nothing. It abandons the core of modern Sonic, and it kind of irks me to find that how it failed to recapture classic Sonic and misunderstood what makes Sonic distinct in his modern platforming peers. The model is extremely underutilized, the art style is alienating, the gameplay lacks identity, the tone is at odds with its own character design, and it's not a bad game because it's unplayable, it's a bad game because it's forgettable, directionless, and hollow. A weird middle child between the loved past and the uncertain future. Are we finding any redemption? Hell yeah! Sonic Mania is a game that's not just a love letter for the classics, but a triumphant celebration of Sonic's legacy, recaptured through the impeccable polish, rich animation, and a stunning attention to detail. From its jaw-dropping animated intro to its exquisitely crafted levels, Sonic Mania isn't just a return to form, but it's a masterclass in how to modernize retro design while keeping the soul intact. When Sonic Mania released in 2017, it wasn't just another Sonic game, it was the game that Sonic fans had been waiting for since the early 90s. A collaboration between Christian Whitehead, Headcanon, Pegadodo West Games, and Sega. Mania wasn't built by a committee, it was crafted by fans turned developers, people who understood what made Sonic iconic and how to elevate it. And from the very first moment, Sonic Mania screams quality, passion, and reverence. The opening cinematic is a retro dream come true. Even starting producing by Powerhouse Animation and directed by Tyson Hess, this cinematic immediately sets the tone, vibrant, expressive, and bursting with style. The squash and stretch is used to perfection here. Sonic's body has elasticity, his limbs have life, and every movement is exaggerated yet controlled, and true to 90s level animation principles. The colors here are bold and clean, echoing the Sega return of Sega Saturn and Sonic Jam intro, but with the modern production values. The characters of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles move with attitude. Timing of their actions, the bounce in Sonic's step, and the flapping of Tails' propeller's spin share the kinetic energy. It's a refined to near perfection, and completely highlights exactly why the classic games stood out for what they were, but never actually took away from the identity of classic Sonic, and perfectly polished it to make it more homage to its original fans. The intro isn't just good, but it's legendary, and you could definitely argue one for the other based on what art style you prefer, as that is kind of the way that Sonic has always been, as the fanbase is very split. But it's a pure distilled shot of Sonic joy, perfectly animated with a retro-futuristic flair, and it's the first time Sonic Mania wasn't playing around. While Sonic Mania's gameplay and art direction is rooted in 2D pixel art and is incredible in the way that it executes these plans, it uses modern tools and thinking to breathe into new life into the classic look. Sonic's sprite sheet is redrawn from scratch, and this isn't recycled Genesis material. Every frame is lovingly crafted. The animations have more frames, meaning smooth transitions between idle, walk, run, jump, drop dash, skidding, and more. Instead of relying on the flicker for expressiveness, Sonic expressions shift mid-action. His brows furrow while charging the spin dash, and his arms flail during a sudden stop, and he even smirks with that old school attitude. With the rounded geometry and higher detail, even in its pixel form, Sonic Mania's character art achieves curved nuanced shapes ever seen before in the 16-bit games, and the bit increases in this game. The face and eyes of Sonic's eyes are more oval and less blocky, and they animate more naturally with visible white space and depth. The spikes now have more rounded and are more slightly dynamic, bending slightly with motion, not stiff and rigid. The shoes and gloves are more visible with outlines and more shadowing, giving his limbs real dimensionality and despite the retro style. And Sonic Mania's visuals don't honor the classics, they also refine them with the 2D pinnacle and actually improve upon what was originally shown. Smooth as silk, as the drop dash and the movement mechanics increase the game's fun. The gameplay in Sonic Mania feels incredible, refined, responsive, and deeply satisfying. This isn't just for nostalgia, but this is design excellence in terms of the model. The drop dash might be the most important addition to 2D Sonic since the spin dash itself. Charge at mid-air land, and it instantly launches Sonic forward. It encourages flow, speed, conservation, and aggressive play. It makes the level feel more connected and speedrun friendly, rewarding those who memorize layouts. The frame animation is clean and impactful. You feel the weight shift as Sonic lands and rockets forward. And the spin dash with rolling physics, as Sonic's physics mirror the Genesis trilogy. Momentum is conserved across slopes, jumps, and spins. Roll down a hill, you gain speed naturally. Hit a ramp while spinning, launch into the air with the satisfying inertia, and this is the kind of physics-driven platforming Sonic fans dream of, but Mania adds to it without any bugs or compromises. The animation philosophy was a living, breathing Sonic, as Sonic Mania gives Sonic bespoke animations for nearly every action. The idle pose as Sonic taps his foot like he did in Sonic 1, but now with smoother elbow articulation and shifting weight balance. There's a skid animation as Sonic leans back dynamically, and his legs flail outward and his pupils wide. The victory pose of Sonic 2 and Sonic CD flare, but with more exaggerated upper body twist, and Super Sonic glows with the animated flares and maintains the classic upward spiked pose with custom animations for movement and transformations. But it's all about the personality, and in Mania, Sonic's personality is finally alive once again. Studiopolis Zone is a showcase for Mania's visual mastery, and if there's one level that fully encapsulates Sonic Mania's visual beauty and sound design, it's this. Neon lights, film rolls and antennas, test pattern and transitions, and this level is dazzling with homage to retro Hollywood and 90s media with its aesthetic, and the background's aesthetic features animated parallax layers, blinking lights and CRT scan lines. It's a visual feast. The gameplay platforms are designed with verticality in mind, utilizing the bounce pads, the shutter doors, and the rotating elevators. There's a steady flow in the row of ramps and loops that perfectly highlight the momentum-based gameplay. The drop dash shines here, as you find it straightways and curved slopes when launching into Rolf, and it feels amazing. The music also. Lopes track is iconic, jazzy, snappy, and bursting with energy. The bass line is groovy, the synths pop, and it's one of the most catchiest Sonic tracks in years. This level sounds exactly what Sonic was supposed to look like. Studiopolis isn't just good, but it's an absolute masterwork. A perfect example of how level art and sound design with mechanics can combine in pure play joy. Sonic Mania is a love letter to the fans. It doesn't just feel like the past. It doesn't feel cheap or lazy or just a brash remake of something that was supposed to be with Sonic. It is something that is actually built with love. It's about the expressiveness through the sprite art. It's about the polish in movement and animation. It's about the level design that trusts you to go fast while rewarding mystery. It's about the momentum control and joy. And this game proved that Sonic could thrive again, not by chasing trends, but by embracing what made him iconic in the first place, but polishing it to perfection without making it seem lazy. What's the true Sonic 4? It's not just a throwback, it's a 2D evolution with modern eye and classic art. From the incredibly smooth animations to the refined character model, and from the satisfying physics to the sheer joy of the running through Studiopolis at top speed, Sonic Mania is true 2D peak Sonic. The blue blur is truly back, and this time, he never left again. Sonic Forces was the game that just wanted to be more. Released in 2017 again, Sonic Forces arrived as the big budget follow-up to the universally adored Sonic Mania, and it couldn't have been more different. Where Mania celebrated Sonic's rich 2D legacy with loving care, Forces felt like it was by the numbers product, a game that was made to check boxes rather than push boundaries. It had ambition, and you could feel it in the cutscenes, the bombastic score, the tone that tries to desperately feel urgent, but behind the cinematic posturing is a hollow shell, and Sonic Forces is technically competent, occasionally enjoyable, but never even felt alive. Sonic's model is just dead. Sonic's model is just sleek and soulless, as we start with what works. This model of Sonic Sonic is sound, and he's got the same sharp quills, the aerodynamic build, and the expressive features that define the modern era. It's a continuation of the Generations Unleashed model, with some tweaks, but doesn't reach its same level of perfection. There is a sort of streamlined silhouette, as Sonic's model was changed from the Hedgehog Engine 1 to Hedgehog Engine 2. A lot of people don't like the shorter quills, the less expressive animation in terms of his run cycle, and everything just to do with modern Sonic and his boost animation, including even the visuals of the boost itself. And the level design, of course, completely makes this entirely worse, and his homing attack, and pretty much everything. And yeah, the eyes don't really have any expression. There are some added curvature in the animation during some of the cutscenes, but anything crazy to speak about. The model works in a good 2.5D perspective, especially seen in Luminous Forest, but easily from side-scrolling sections to full 3D environments, it just becomes incredibly lazy. The model has no life at all. The visual representation is sterile, lacking the kinetic personality of Unleashed, or the bold expressiveness of Mania. It's Sonic on autopilot. But let's ignore the classic games for a second, and let's focus specifically on modern, because these art styles are different, which combine exactly the way the game should represent itself. And obviously, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to express something in a 3D sense, because there's more things to work with. A shocking detail about Sonic Forces is that Sonic doesn't have any auto animations. Seriously, leave him standing still, and he just stands there. Compare this to Sonic Mania, where he taps his foot, frowns, squints, with the classic 90s attitude. More importantly, talk about Unleashed. Unleashed, he stretches, looks around, balances himself. But Forces, nothing. Sonic just stares blankly like a soulless avatar. This isn't just a nitpick. This is Sonic's entire identity, especially modern Sonic. It's built around being cool, animated and alive, but he's just a model with no different from customizable avatars beside him. You get the feeling that the model was just made to fit the production scale and not to actually enhance the character of Sonic himself. I mean, Forces was apparently predicted to be in production for less than a year, so I can completely understand why this would happen, but at the same time, that never should have been a problem in the first place. The run cycle is bare minimum, as it's just very limited. In Unleashed, you see the different stages, and in Generations you see this too. His body will stretch with momentum, but in Forces, the run is functional. It's incredibly rigid, there's very little stretch, almost no bounce, except for sometimes in this jump, and the feet animation is weirdly slow at times, especially during scripted boost sections. There's no transition from jog to sprint, and it's either walk or full boost. That makes Sonic feel less dynamic, and in 2.5D segments, the animation is still even stiffer, with limited expressions or weight shifts. This doesn't feel like Sonic is running, but it feels like he's just gliding along a path designed for him with no resistance. The Hedgehog Engine 2 shows the plasticky idea of Sonic, the graphical evolution of the engine that powered Sonic Unleashed. It's capable of beautiful lighting, HDR effects, and the crisp resolution, but comes at a cost. The art direction suffers, as it's up to you on what you like, but the lighting looks sharp and sometimes even cinematic, and the environments have clean sheen and depth of field, and that's something I can appreciate. But the cons massively outscale this. The worlds are usually lifeless and generic. The level backdrops feel like tech demos, and sometimes I actually look at some of the level design and say, why can't I go there? Green Hill, for example, looks more like a template than actually living in space, but if you look at something like Sunset Heights, you wish you could fully explore that. But hey, something like Shadow Generations definitely fixed this issue. Everything feels static, there's no wind in the trees, no dust trails in Sonic's feet. The world barely reacts to what you're even doing. It's technically impressive, but artistically vacant. Sonic's vibrant identity is buried under corporate gloss, and the idea for just Sonic to just act like something that is a robot. And Super Sonic, why even bother? It was an afterthought, just like Colors, for free. But that's almost worse, because it's meaningless. You don't even unlock him via the Chaos Emeralds or by playing story content, he's just downloaded. There's no transformation sequence, just a glow overlay. His controls are the same, no exciting physics changes or no new animations, and his presence is barely acknowledged. There's no fanfare or dramatic use in the story, and in the previous games, becoming Super Sonic felt like a moment. It felt like the final boss. In Forces, it's a checkbox. Another thing is, I know some people wouldn't always want Super Sonic to be at the end of Sonic games, but I find like it's a staple. And another thing that we could talk about is Super Sonic has always been free, but do you remember how they tried to make people pay pay for Super Sonic. It was never something that happened due to the backlash, but they were originally going to charge money for this. The lazy design philosophy. Where's the heart? Sonic Forces felt like it was built by a team that was afraid to take risks. Instead, it was focusing on what made Sonic exciting: momentum-based gameplay, style, personality, and player freedom. It opts for auto-run sections, over-scripted levels, short, shallow stage design, and empty 2.5D sections, and a new avatar system that overshadows Sonic himself. And that's the real tragedy. Modern Sonic is barely the star of his own game. He's on the front cover. You play as the customizable avatar for almost any of the stages. The campaign barely explores Sonic as a character. He's reduced to motivational speeches and one-liners, and his supposed capture and return in the story holds zero weight, and him being tortured meant nothing. The Resistance narrative never really justifies the gameplay direction. The perception damage of Sonic's identity crisis shows that after Generations and Mania, fans expected Sonic Forces to solidify Sonic's direction and was a comeback from the betrayal that Sonic Lost World gave us. It was a thrilling, fast personality filled a 3D experience, but instead it eroded trust in the modern Sonic formula. This game felt like it wanted to be more of a subdued platform with safe mechanics and a thrilling adventure, and the borrowed from Mario's Galaxy structure and the aesthetic in parts, diluting Sonic's identity, and showed a forced blending of modern and classic Sonic narratives that made no sense. Classic Sonic inclusion felt like a marketing bullet point, not a narrative necessity, and made no sense. Is he from the past or the future? Bearing in mind though, we're talking about Sonic's model, and we have to say that the expressiveness between both of these characters in this game are incredibly lackluster. It made people even question that was Sonic even supposed to be in this game? Where was Mania as it was a celebration? Forces felt like a compromise, a product without even a soul. Sonic Forces is the definition of mediocrity in its model and the game itself. It's not broken, it's not offensive, but it's deeply uninspired, and it has moments of quality that flashes of potential but is ultimately hollow. The modern Sonic model looks fine but moves very flatly, and the game uses impressive tech but lacks artistic courage, and it wants to be something important, but it plays it safe. It delivers Sonic, but not the feeling of Sonic. Sonic Forces was a message. We're not sure where to go next. Thankfully, Sonic Mania was already in the lighting of the way forward. And what came next? Sonic Frontiers. This would answer the message with a resounding cry of rebirth. Sonic Frontiers marks a milestone shift, a move away from the traditional level-based gameplay into an open zone exploration. As designed by Iizuka, it's a stylistic and structural transformation, blending the platforming and action RPG elements into a vast, modular world and how Sonic himself fits into the bold new template. With the graphics and art style, I find this to be a visual triumph. This is my favorite Sonic game, just for the gameplay itself, but I still think Unleashed still has the best kind of animation. There is stunning visual fidelity. Frontiers features some of the best graphics in any Sonic game, with dynamic lighting, glossy textures, and smart architectural design, bringing each zone to life. The lighting-driven tone of Sonic's coat and quills seems to respond to the sunlight and moonlight, a lighter blue in day and a deeper hue at night, giving his model a naturalistic feel that blends the artistry and realism. I even love how Sonic's model can slightly squash and stretch when you're trying to enter the drop dash. The role of detail in the foliage interaction blades of grass subtly react as Sonic runs past, leaving visual trails and dust swells. The openness isn't just structural, it's interactive. I mean, even when you're on Ares Island, Sonic leaves away footprints in the sand. Sonic's quills are impeccably modeled with polygonal refinement and natural curvature. Some players miss the longer, sleeker quills, such as Unleashed, but the current style avoids rogue clipping and appears well for well-curated open zones. His posture, however, while particularly standing still, is more relaxed, perhaps too neutral. Hen might come across as bland in idle states. However, when Sonic is in motion or in combat, this neutral stance provides a strong contrast that makes movement feel purposeful and grounded. Sonic speaks with a more richer, more serious tone here than in Forces. The deeper voice better matches the weight and the tone of the story-centric, slightly darker world. The cutscenes show improved facial articulation, though the game could still push for further emotional beats with more subtle eyebrow movement, lip sync variance, and facial depth needed. I don't think this game would need much. It just needs more time in the oven, and I think that the video I made in the past, which I'm going to link in the top right corner if you want to look at that, will show exactly how the future of Sonic games will look like. Movement and squash and stretch mechanics. As the drop dash returns, the beloved drop dash retaining its satisfying squash on crown, elongate, and launch effects. It pops. The moment Sonic lands, it's a visual indicator of the power and elasticity, giving the game that burst of speed and recall from Mania. Even the way the game feels in Sonic's model is enhanced by the way that that the spin dash works, as you can launch yourself off and reminds you of the homage and respect from Sonic Adventure. The run animation is fluid and confident, yet doesn't reach Unleash's same energetic compression and extension. It's a modern run, clean, efficient, and suited to open terrain, but missing some of the most dramatic snap. But I understand, this was something that was holding the game back. But this next section is the most impeccable section of any Sonic game in history, in my opinion. Combat. Combat in Frontiers is the most developed it's ever been in the series. Yes, people talk about the Werehog, but I find that this game has precision weapon attacks, combos, parries, and offers real muscle to Sonic gameplay. Sure, could it be innovated? Definitely. But what is here is magnificent. There is dynamic combat animations including overhead swings, sliding attacks, and quick parries, all flowing all seamlessly into a running or jumping, and also involves the squash and stretch. I mean, look at the way that Sonic punches when he's in Phantom Rush. The skill tree and moves shows that there's a charging dash attacks that draw a glyph power, aerial vortex moves, elemental infused sidesteps, and defensive stances that allow for a parry or riposte. All the animated crisply and with all aura blur effects, damage flicker and stagger animations with vivid, kinetic and deftly balanced enhanced graphics and visuals. When Sonic is engaged in combat, the stiffness disappears. He moves with purpose, rhythm and clarity. There is a perfect combat flow with the sword clash reaction, the SFX plus armor break sound visuals and the momentary camera shake. It adds weight to each encounter, and the way that Sonic has to parry and deal with some of these enemies such as Knight and Supreme is amazing. The idle between fights, Sonic exudes composure and readiness, showing a calm before the storm presence, and the idle animations are impeccable. Super Sonic has an apogee of power, as Super Sonic in Frontiers is visually striking and it is emotionally resonant. The peak of Frontiers is definitely in its combat, and in Super Sonic himself. The glowing aura of the white wraps around his quills and shoes, not an overlay, but an actual bloom effect. The movement blur intensifies as he charges, with a persistent trailing effect, and the combat god mode with Super Sonic tackling enemies as though invisible, as each uppercut sends enemies flying, as each dash roars with power. Notice the dramatic throw in the air of Giganto, and the Wyvern crash into the mountain moment, and the Knight thrash into the volcano arena are cinematic set pieces. The hit impacts and shakes the camera. The enemies fizz into debris. It's not only awesome, but the visual effects are layered, distortion wave, flame pop, dust surge. These aren't just actions but they're narrative destruction, reinforcing Super as godlike and making this my ultimate favorite Sonic game. Yes, it's not perfect in the way that the potential that it could be having, but the game itself is incredibly fun, and the model definitely complements that. Put this game on a 4K TV and truly play it and watch the animations and notice how amazing this game actually looks. The model really sells Sonic as someone who's trying to transform, and it's not even the model that I like really to the massive extent. It's what they do with the model, it's the combat, it's the way that Sonic feels more alive. It's like I have more control of the character. It's like every time you go off something, you end up doing a flip, or you do some combat, or you do any move possible. I feel like I'm in control of Sonic. And another thing that you notice is that you can stop on a halt. There are a bunch of settings that allow you to make the control of Sonic feel better, and that directly impacts the way that the model is perceived because there is more range of motion with the model itself. The model is okay, but I think that this entire animation and the model itself is amazing because of the animations and the frequency itself. Would I prefer to have a more CGI model as seen in some of the mods? Probably, yes, but I still think that this is great. Sonic's familiar moves has running, rail loops, rings, and homing attacks all return and seamlessly woven into the Assassin's Creed's open zones. And there are collectible phantom spirits which encourage exploration using existing mechanics in new ways, and we also have cyberspace, which honestly I thought was pretty great in Final Horizon, but that can honestly be up to your opinion. There is dynamic interaction with foliage bends and ripples under Sonic's feet. There are wave crashes, open lakes as he enters, and traversal sounds that adjust volume of terrain, with stone versus grass versus water. The world isn't static, as it responds to Sonic, a step towards an inward ecosystem. There is serious tone and storytelling, as the overall tone is serious but hopeful, which adds the dystopian theme and the mysterious ruins, and the lingering melancholy. It actually allows Sonic to feel more serious, and Ian Flynn delivers a surprisingly layered plot, with tormented ruins, AI corruption, hidden civilizations, and all working towards the emotional crescendo at the Final Horizon with Supreme. And Sonic's quieter moments are all handled well, a nervous glance, a fake smirk of a plan, and it's a model showing character, even if subtly. They don't even have to try in the sense of making Sonic more expressive, they just have to make him more badass, like he always has been. Final Horizon showcases this perfectly, and we see the peak of the Sonic animation in this DLC. This DLC was planned to come out in the first place, but what you notice is that with the budget increasing due to the Sonic movies and the way that we've seen the animations increase due to the Unreal Engine test, Sonic Frontiers will become something that not only pivots Sonic into the next zone, but allows us to fully understand where the turning point happened. There are some areas needing polish, such as the idle presence could be improved with some variants to breathing animation and lean shifts. Some facial animation during dialogue is mostly static on the bottom half as it only comes alive in key emotional beats, so we do need to see some animation changes. However, for what it's here, there is a lot of love. Squash and stretch mechanics should be extended into running transitions with more curve and turning, just like how the combat expresses this. If you truly go right next to your screen and use the Phantom Rush, you will notice that there is a lot of animations that were perfectly crafted in the combat system, and the combat is actually fun. There could be more asymmetry in the core placement, glove wrinkles, and the default detail that gives it life. Even with these missing punches, Frontiers points towards the right evolution path, and is definitely one of my favorite picks in terms of the way that the model works, not because of the model itself, but because the way they utilize the model. Sonic Frontiers is not perfect, but it's the boldest statement Sonic has made in years. Open zones, deep combat, expressive models, and a narrative weight that finally adds coalescence into something meaningful. The visual fidelity merges with responsive gameplay, and Sonic is no longer a glorified mascot. He is a hero explored with alien ruins, fighting back chaos and evolving as he goes. I actually feel like I can control Sonic properly in this game, and this game is both a beginning and an end as a statement. The Sonic series has a future, and it's an open, expressive, story-driven one. With a bit more polish, longer quills, and added facial nuance with fuller idle animation, the character model in Frontiers could have hit peak production quality, but where credit is due, it delivers one of the most way-giving fans and skeptics alike a reason to believe that Sonic isn't just nostalgic, he's evolving. But if you wanted me to give my honest opinion on the game itself, this game is my favorite Sonic game. The combat is so fun, everything. I just had to kind of make this off script for a second. Play Frontiers, it's a great game. Sonic Frontiers is not just another entry into the franchise, but it's a statement of the reinvention, as it's a platformer rather than a traditional open world game. It breaks the mold by integrating platforming roots with exploration, storytelling, and a sense of scale that has never quite been achieved in any Sonic game prior. And it takes the legacy of Sonic and stretches it into an unknown territory, merging the classic elements with modern action combat, dynamic traversal, and the emotional narrative tone. And right out of the path, we see the lighting responsiveness, the environmental design, the favorite visual direction, as it may not be the best in the series, but captures the naturalism whilst keeping it surreal, and this is my favorite art style for Sonic. Sonic Frontiers gets the artistic brilliance, the deep combat, the mature tone, the glorious model detailing, the spectacular supersonic, the proper tone with voice setting work, and smart idle expressive animations and drop dash and open movement options, perfect. There's not really much when talking about Sonic in this remaster. Yes, there is the drop dash. This is kind of a Sonic Generations just complete rehash, and it's the same thing for the most part. The game feels smoother as it's technically on higher powered systems, and the cutscenes just feel better as they're AI upscaled, and it just looks better in general. But if we were to look at some of the cutscenes, Sonic is incredibly expressive. Sonic looks great. This is the cutscenes that we were expecting in Frontiers, and now it's fully realized. It seems like Sonic Team has the budget, and if we're looking at the way that we've seen the cutscenes in that previous video I did, we're gonna see Sonic in an incredibly amazing squash and stretch way. We still would appreciate if squash and stretch was a paramount identity of Sonic X Shadow Generations, but if we truly look at it for what it is, this game is nothing more than a technical marvel at exploring the way that Shadow even looks, as his model is expressed more deeply. The graphics themselves are phenomenal, and everything about the animation is massively upscaled in this game. Everything feels smoother on the Shadow portion. Yes, Sonic Generations is held back by its time, but let's not forget how amazing Sonic Generations was in the first place. There's not really much to say about this game, but what I will say is that the future of Sonic games is looking bright, and if we can take away something from this video, is that we've seen the evolution of Sonic's model change from the 16-bit pixel to the different art styles that we can appreciate for Sonic for who he is. And definitely with the new Sonic game coming out in 2 or so years time, we're going to see a brand new evolution with the increased budget and the massive production scale rising, and the entire new team working at Sonic Team on the brand new Sonic game. Ranking, because I don't want to drag it on too much, so you've already kind of understood the gist of how I understand each and every Sonic game, and we're going to go through all of the essential ones. So for Sonic 1, I truly believe that this goes straight in B tier, because yes, it sets the foundations for the classic Sonic and allows for the model to fully shine in its actual model and beauty. Sonic 2 completely moves on from this and improves on some of the animations. And for that, I can put it confidently in A tier. For Sonic CD, I think I'm going to put this one in C, as whilst the Super Peel Out did allow for it to feel sort of unique, there's nothing really noteworthy of change here. Next is Sonic 3, which honestly I believe goes in S tier because everything is refined straight from the animations and all of the different types of moves that Sonic is able to pull off. Now I think the same goes for Sonic Adventure, where it goes with Sonic 1, but I do think that it's a little bit better than Sonic 1, so I'm going to put it respectively in A, but not as close to as Sonic 2, and Sonic Adventure 2 definitely has the best model in terms of the animation and just the way it looks in general. I do believe that Sonic Heroes is a bit of a disappointment, and that's why I'm going to put it right in the bottom of C. Shadow the Hedgehog had potential, but didn't actually flush out Sonic's model, but then again, it wasn't really Sonic's game. I do like the model, but I feel like it wasn't fully realized, and it's very poor for 2005, so I'm going to put it in D tier. Now for Sonic 2006, I truly believe that this goes within A or S tier, but I'm going to put it in A because whilst the game has a beautiful model, some of the animations aren't flushed, but the reason why this goes in A is because the model massively picks up where the broken pieces were left in S tier, and that's genuinely what's going to carry it. Now, no debate, this goes in S tier. I don't even know. I don't even have to say anything there. Now, you're going to be surprised when I say this, but I genuinely believe that Sonic Colors goes after Sonic 1. So I believe that Sonic Colors is at the top of B, and then there's Sonic 1, because yes, it's okay in what it does, but it's just not as polished as, let's say, Sonic Unleashed. I just don't think it deserves that A tier. I can't see it being in that same slot. Sonic Generations will obviously go in S tier, just below Unleashed, because I feel like they're similar on par with each other. Sonic Lost World massively portrays Sonic's identity and fails to recapture the elements that brought Sonic back to life, so I'm going to go ahead and put this in C tier. Or actually, I'm compelled to put this in D, because to be honest, I really just don't like the way that this has been construed. But you know what, I'm going to put this in, I'm going to put this before Shadow, because I feel like Shadow the Hedgehog has a lot more errors within the actual animation itself, but Sonic Lost World's fine. Now Sonic Mania obviously goes in S tier, but I believe that it goes right next to Sonic Unleashed. I feel like I'm going to put Unleashed first. Sonic Forces is fine. Honestly, I'd rather just put it there. I think it works perfectly in B tier for what it is. Sonic Frontiers definitely goes above all of these. I feel like it goes probably, I would say, right next to Unleashed. I'd probably say that's fair. And, you know, I'm being very non-judgmental because Frontiers is my favorite game. In terms of if it was ranking favorite games, that would be my number one. And Sonic X Shadow Generations, honestly, I've got to say, I've got to put this... honestly, I'd say here. I feel like that's fair. I feel like both of these generation games are very on par with each other. Now, is there anything I would change? Okay, so I feel like Sonic Unleashed would go right at the beginning here, so I'm going to give it its due diligence and put it right at the top. I feel like because they're both very different art styles, you can't necessarily change the way you feel about them, so I'd probably have to create a modern list and then a classic list, so this is kind of a little bit strange for me. And yes, I do strongly believe that this is my final take. If you want to have any debates about this in the comments, I feel like this is one of the most fairest lists you can make, because there's nothing really else that you could say about this model about the models in these particular debates to actually fight against it. But hey, I would love to see what your guys' list in the comments is. And by the way, in S tier, all of these are very marginally slim, so if you might say why is Sonic Unleashed there and Sonic Genesis near the end of S tier, these are pretty much all on par. I feel like these are all extremely good S tiers, so please don't get angry if you notice that one's right at the end and one's at the start. They're pretty much all on par, so I can't really like organize them properly. And thank you so much for watching this video. It took me an incredibly long time to say all of this and do the script and everything, so if you can leave a like and a subscribe, I'd massively appreciate that. And hey, let's see if we can reach 3,000 subscribers. Do you think you guys can help me? Thank you. Hey, you don't have to subscribe if you don't want to, but honestly, I'm thinking we can do this.